Hello everyone, my name is Akshay. Welcome to the Studiovity Production Hub, and here we have Michael NJ Wright. Many of you know with the Emmy Award winner, and he has been served and worked for NBC, ESPN, and MTV. And for most of you, you are known from the movies like American Fumble and the Francis Ellis Mysteries. I wanted to welcome Michael NJ Wright, and I'm very blessed, and I wanted to tell all my audience that he has more than a 3 decade of experience, and I've been honored to be on the Studiovity Film Production Hub today, and I wanted to hear how Michael NJ Wright is feeling.
Hello, Akshay. How are you?
I am good. I am good. Thanks for joining. And I wanted to say one thing, that he is a guy who started with the manual thing, and those machines, big machine he has worked with, and it's become an extension of his body. Okay, maybe in cinematography, maybe DOP, and then our next generation who work on that automatic mode. There are many automatic mode come, and then there is an AI mode come. So he have more than a 3 decade of experience, and I am presuming that many of the viewer can learn that how he inclined his passion toward artistic and creativity thing. So this is a very honorable talk, and I am happy to ask some few questions about his journey, how he begins. Okay, so I wanted to tell that he is graduated from American Film Institute in 1986. So I wanted to know your college life and how you then started beginning.
Wow. Okay. Well, college life. I started at the University of Illinois, and they had a very small cinematography program. I actually went in pre-med. My father was a physician, and so I thought I would be following in his footsteps. I ultimately ended up following in his footsteps because he was an art collector and an amateur photographer. So that's what I walked away from as a son. He was an amateur photographer and a collector of art. I was immersed in this stuff. It was just around the house all the time. And so you little by little, you just think of the world in these harmonics and these balances. When you see a sculpture, it's balanced. When you see a painting, it's balanced. There's a color palette there. There's these things that you just wake up with, and it just became something of a natural progression.
Okay, and then after you completed your graduation, how did you start your journey from the first project you begin with, and people wanted to know like how you did get there, and how did you start it?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about the transition from student or fellow at the AFI to the professional world, I built a reel, and I just started knocking on doors. Now you have to understand, 1986 was a very different year than 24, 20, 96. The technology made connecting so much easier now. Back then, you put the tape under your arm and you went and knocked on doors, and you were face to face with people. You hit the film festivals. I'll give you a little trick. If you even if you're not a smoker,
Okay.
carry a lighter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Carry a lighter, because that'll get a lot of conversations started. Because the smokers always congregate together. Now they're normally like editors, you know what I mean? But hey, if you're an editor, find the cluster of people smoking, and you'll probably find your tribe. But those kind of things. A portable battery charger for cell phones, the right pen. Things that people need in the moment. And that'll help you introduce yourself into some conversations when you're in the festival market, when you're in those things. But as far as getting gigs, I just had, there was one director, his name was Jeff Hathcock.
Okay.
And he just saw my work from AFI, and he said, this kid can do the job for the money that I have to do the job. And that movie was called Streets of Death, and you could probably still find it out there.
Yeah.
You could find some early Michael Wright out there.
Audience wanted to know, like, this today's generation, people are little bit impatient. Okay, they wanted everything on a instant. Okay, at that time there is no social, there is no LinkedIn, there is nothing like that, and you have to particularly knock and then showing up the project and some doing some extra hack, okay, to get into the conversation. So that's really nice of it, and I can trying to imagine those days, with a colonial time, with a brown skin that we see in cinematography. And also, like, my next question is on the behind the camera, the art of cinematography. Okay, so you started with doing and working with the movies, and then you have worked with major network like NBC, ESPN and Discovery, and on independent features. So can you share some of the most memorable experience from these projects, perhaps the moment where everything just clicked?
Well, it's less of an epiphany and more of a constellation.
Okay.
You each one of them is interesting, but when they come together, they make a shape. And that's really what it is. I had a friend who was a producer that was doing a documentary. We're doing a segment on a boxer who had rehabilitated and from a criminal past and became an Olympian. And so I was the cameraman on that segment. Mm-hmm. The MTV thing was real world when they came here to Chicago. So these were all really camera operating gigs. The NBC and the ESPN thing, I did the lighting as well. Okay. And there was WSNS in there too, because WSNS was the Spanish affiliate of NBC. So I went back and forth between them. Those camera operating jobs, you really had to be nimble for those jobs.
What was the timeline when you started with these,
it's kind of ironic that we're doing this on September 11th, because one of my very first jobs for WSNS was September 12th, 2001, when they had shut down the city completely. And I was, if you know downtown Chicago, there was like 4 people in downtown Chicago because they shut down everything, right? And I was one of them. There was a cop, and then there was the reporter, and there was the engineer. We're the only people in the loop. So that was an experience. Growing up in a town, and then you see it in the zombie movies. Where everybody's gone, and it was that experience.
Yeah. So those big moment Chicago and entire like 4 people are down on the street and filming, and I can imagine those things at that point of time in 2001. So in 2001 in India, we have a great transition time in India. New age filmmaking started because the television in India become a new stream. Okay, people earlier watch it on a big screen, and then people are transitioned to the episodic and television and those things. Okay, this was a time, and I wanted to know, to tell everyone that he is also a winner of Emmy award. Okay, and that's where it's a great breakthrough, I think, in the world of cinema and television, where people get this precious award. So I wanted to know about how you get there, how much time would it take for a people who are aspiring to get, maybe an Oscar or maybe an Emmy or these,
Oh,
prestigious award. Because
that's
in India, I can tell you, we have, we have around, few Oscars, okay, but we wanted to in India, we wanted to get more Oscar level film, okay. And in Indian cinema is full and rich of tradition, custom tradition and methodology. So wanted to understand, and yeah.
well. I could never predict or direct somebody to an exact path to get any one of these awards. I mean, I was just fortunate. To be absolutely honest, the Emmy came from being in the right place at the right time. Right? It was for the we have a marathon, an annual marathon,
Okay.
and I was attached to SNS, which was the Telemundo,
Okay.
and they needed a lighting director over at NBC, which was WMAQ, and so and I don't want to diminish anything, but it was a fantastic team effort. I mean, it was such an enterprise. All the cameras and the helicopters and everything that was going on with that, and taking over the lakefront of the city. And my job was really, as a lighting director, was really like the basic knowledge, the basic task you have to know, and that is to balance the interior to the exterior in a shot.
Okay.
Because if you don't, the windows can blow out or you'll lose the faces.
Yes.
And so it's one of the most fundamental skills that you have to have, is balancing all the light energy in the frame so that it stays within the dynamic range or the confines of what the sensor can capture. And I was just able to do that.
Okay, for my audience, I wanted to tell, though he's been very humble, okay, telling and sharing that it's a basic thing, but the precision comes with a long hours and hours of work, day and night of work to get to that exact
Sure.
position, that where the seamless thing or the final out tune thing comes out from the hard work, the balancing of the camera, the balancing of the aperture, and those miniature thing that need to be taken to the mind, and the
Oh,
technical.
they have to be. They have to be. I think there's a quote attributed to Kobe Bryant about taking 1,000 free throws in practice before the game. That kind of thing. And you have to do this. I mean, every other serious craft in the world practices before the game, practices before the surgery, practices before the dish is prepared. You must practice your craft. There's no substitute for it. And because a part of it has to become intuitive.
Yes.
Right? It has to become intuitive, because when you're solving problems now. You're not solving problems after you can refer to your phone or your textbook or anything. You're solving problems on your feet. And the only way you're going to do that is through practice.
Yes. Thanks. So we have viewers of writers, screenwriters, mainly directors, and those who are into cinematographer. I wanted to brief about our Studiovity Film Production Hub. Okay, so it's a combination where writers can write their screenplay with a precision. They have their multiple tool, and to that direction we have AI script breakdown, cinematography, short list, and to the line production we have budgeting. Why I put this into the middle of the podcast? Because he is the one who did a transition from cinematography to the director and screenwriter too. Okay, he is a filmmaker, and he did many works that people known for it. Michael, I wanted to ask you, not only excelled as a cinematographer but also as a writer and a director. What inspired you to do the transition into these roles was a natural progression for you, or like it's come as a part of the job, or it's an intuitive, or you wanted to be to this position because you have that imagination that you wanted to put and craft it into a movie or a television show?
Well, you just answered the question.
No. I people wanted to hear from you, like how did you make a transition, like.
Well, I studied in school. I started at the University of Illinois. As I mentioned, there was a very small cinematography class, and he was a brilliant instructor. This guy was a Bulgarian cinematographer who escaped the Soviet the Soviet satellite world and came to the United States and made a work for himself, made a way for himself. And then I was accepted into the American Film Institute. But when you are and also I studied a little bit at Columbia College, and I took every job I could get. Every job. They're like, we need a boom operator for this. I'm your guy. We need a dolly grip. I'm your guy. You know what I mean? I took every job that was available as a student. But when you were a student, you had to write the script that you would shoot and direct.
Okay.
That was the way we did it back here, right? So we were not delineating labor in that way in the classroom. You had to do the whole thing. So I became a professional cinematographer simply because many of my classmates didn't want to do that kind of work.
Oh.
They were happy to have somebody else come in and do the cinematography. And as a student, I'm like, well, in essence, they're paying me to learn, right? Because we're all paying the same tuition, but they're not doing the work. So they're giving a piece of what they've already purchased over to me, and I can learn my craft all the better this way. And then it just turned into a career.
Beautiful.
So I was exposed to the writing and the directing. And my first passion was always writing. I wanted to be a screenwriter. That's what I wanted to do. I grew up with storytellers. Everybody, every holiday, every barbecue, every uncle, cousin, somebody coming over to the house. It was a story. Nothing was simple. Everything had a beginning, middle, and end. I grew up around this stuff. And so story was always key. And the forms were just a way to get story to a larger audience. That's all the forms are. The forms of themselves are not that critical. It's can they get to the people you're after?
Okay. Now I can connect the dot. There is a theory of connecting the dot from Steve Jobs, and I can now connect, like you presumably wanted to become a writer and a director. You wanted to get into the direction and get into a cinematography, and you take to that extent that where you've been awarded with the Emmy. You work with major NBCs, MTVs, Discoveries, along with you fulfilling your career as and passion for the writing and direction, and that's how I can relate now. Okay, so
can I add that cinematography is writing with light.
Okay.
That's what cinematography is. And so if you understand what the story is, then you can attribute a certain lighting scheme that underscores that. But again, it comes back to story. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's your iPhone or Panavision or whatever. If the story's not there, there's no piece of equipment that's going to save you. None.
I think this is the most beautiful line I have ever heard. Like it's cinematography is a writing of light. Okay, people are telling the story via lighting, and that's a very profound meaning into it. Like people can relate that some people have that much level of intuition that it will evoke your emotion through the lighting and through the way camera is being taking toward and narrating the story. So yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
that's awesome. Like, being I would say, being, you are a great storyteller and a writer, because though you get a cinematography job out of the blue, as no one is doing, you understand that this is also a storytelling through the camera lens.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's a beautiful thing. I have never heard, this thing, and I'm been blessed and wanted to tell our audience. Okay, so we have, AI and technology is coming. Okay, back
Hmm.
in day in 1980s and 1990s, where everything is manual. There is, you know no hard disk like of thing. There is so much bundle of reels, and then you have to shoot very precisely, and then there is no automatic, like we have now, you know around 16 GBs of RAM. Those time floppy disks are coming, CDs are coming. I think
Yeah.
CD and floppy disk also not have been discovered or invented back in that day. Okay, so now how are you feeling in the age of AI and technology, and how it evolved? People wanted to know.
Well, I think AI, at least the first incarnation of it or the first generation of it,
Yeah.
is going to be a writer's medium
Okay.
because it's driven by the prompt. So, what I think it has the potential to do is for writers to now bypass the production hurdles. They don't need to have a production designer anymore. They don't need to have a director anymore. They don't need to have a cinematographer anymore. They can, if they can find the right prompt, they can build the entire world just from marshaling their word choices. Now,
Yeah.
here's the danger,
Okay.
because we've seen these cycles before.
Okay.
We've seen when the Steadicam came in, everybody had to put one in. When bleach bypass processing was the thing, everybody had to bleach bypass. We saw the heavy backlight and soft fill bounce that was just became, because they say Hollywood is the town that everybody's dying to be second. They want to imitate. So we're a very imitative craft. But here's where I think a danger might result is if you become, as a writer, the de facto filmmaker with essentially no collaboration whatsoever, you can get trapped. Because if you've never worked with actors and all your success is working with animated figures, you'll never be able to do traditional cinema,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
If you've never collaborated, you won't know how to negotiate for a gear or time or location and so if those things go away completely, you're set. But if they stick around, you run the risk of being pigeonholed.
Relate to the fact that as a human evolve as an animal. Okay, the natural instinct of being an animal. So as much we are closer to the human, to the artistic, to the environment, along with those advanced transformer like AI, then only we can safeguard that craft that people are looking for, and will not get into the vicious circle, where
Sure.
you got trapped. Many screenwriters been waging war against AI. AI will take their job, and those aspect of it. Okay, in America, in India, and across the world. Okay, like people thinking that AI will take the job. Okay, so when we start developing, we realize very soon that AI can be an assistant to the creative process. Okay, rather than doing everything. So at Studiovity, AI play a major role, being a very good assistant. Okay, defining, giving you an idea and suggestion that this can be a scene breakdown, you can highlight this element and put it into the daybreak. But then there is a lots of manual effort also that you wanted to confirm. It will give you those suggestions, but you have to go through it so that your collaborative creative instinct will make and evolve that cinema to a more bigger level.
The time, tools, and talent that is all around you, right? And I also teach what I call the EAR method, the EAR: establish, assign, resolve. So you have to start with something, and you establish something. Now you can establish aesthetics that you want to pursue in this movie, but you also have to establish what you can't move. Like, I can't move that building out of the way. I can't change the weather.
Yeah.
Right? The ceiling's only so high. There's some things that are just implacable.
Yes.
And so then if I can identify those things,
yes,
I try to make them part of the aesthetic. Because why fight them? Why you're going to lose if you fight them?
Yeah.
So I try to roll them into the aesthetic. And so that's the assignment, the establishment. And then the A is for assign. So I pick something. Let's say you have a lens package, and that there's a 14, a 20, a 35, a 50, and an 85. I will decide to only use those focal lengths at certain parts of the movie. That's it. So that's the language. That's the visual language.
Yeah.
And then you do the same thing with light. It's like maybe you never backlight the villains, or you always backlight the villains and you never backlight the hero. You pick something and you stay with it. And that's how you make the image, the word, and the word, the sequence, and the sequence, the movie. That's how I do it. That's what I teach.
Yeah.
You guys just got a college lesson in 4 minutes.
Yeah. I can relate that this comes through a very profound experience. Okay, like in maybe textbook it would be a one paragraph, but when we have more than a 3 decade of experience in cinematography, one can tell that how you wanted to make this part of thing which is not looking good, which is not in your control, to be a part of that aesthetic. Okay, so that's with experiencing, with working with lighting, with lenses, with focal length, so many things. This podcast is very interesting and enlightening to our viewers. Okay, they get to know about the cinematography, the language or the writing of light, and how you can tell the story via light. And it's been a great honor to be on to have a podcast with you. And I think a lot of young audience who wanted to start their career in filmmaking, or those who are working as a great cinematographer, they can learn a lot with Michael. I will put the LinkedIn URL of Michael NJ Wright along with the details, so that you can also connect and be a part of his network. And I'm very happy to have Michael today and being on this podcast.
Listen, the invitation was very humbling. Thank you. If anything that I can contribute, I'm happy to do it.
Happy to be in his network. Thank you, Michael, sir.
My pleasure. Thanks for the invite.